Time is 7:36 a.m. Tuesday, October 7th, and this is the Podly Weekly. Shit. I lost. That sucks. I was really loving not losing, and now I've lost. Thank you, Christian. But got 100 points, so we're okay. But yeah, what a disappointment. We have no more undefeated teams. We have no more winless teams. What a very important Week 5 that was. For the rest of the league, it seems like we have gotten our teams that have risen to the cream of the crop, and then we have a bit of a middle tier that is a very confusing middle tier, and maybe even two tiers in one. And then we still have our tier 3 teams of squads that are magically scoring less points per week than they were the previous week. You know, generally speaking, when you start the season off and you might be scoring like 82 points or maybe 84 points, like, oh, it's been 1 week. Oh, it's been 2 weeks. Well, now we're 5 weeks in, and we've got several teams that are averaging less than 85 points a game. And that represents pretty much all of our Tier 3 teams. Technically speaking, Tanner is averaging 85.39 points a game, but we're going to round down and include him in that group. But that's Mike, Cody, Mitch, and Tanner, all of which are averaging less than 85 points a game, which is almost nearly 10 points underneath our league average, which is 95 points a game. So they are not only not scoring on the average level, they are scoring 10 points below it, which is a distinction there. As for the middle tiers, like I mentioned, and obviously I'll go through all the tiers themselves, it just seems like we have the yin and yang of we're 2 and 3 and 3 and 2. And like it's really hard to tell the difference at this point with some of those teams that are in those camps. They're just every week could be 120 points from a particular team. Speaking of Alec in that case. And another week, we could have someone who could roll 54 points up in that same group, and that's Peyton. As we get closer and closer to the seedings themselves, obviously we are in the final weeks, essentially, of this being a kind of official power ranking, because can you believe it? By next week, we are halfway to the playoffs. So this will start to transition, these tiers and the Nut Report itself will start to really transition towards like a bit of a double click in on the standings and getting a more of an expansion of what those standings really look like, because, you know, as much as we love Sleeper, there's just not enough information there to keep us satiated. So let's dive in to the tiers, considering I'm just so hot to talk about them now, and then we'll get to our segment. So tier 1, we have myself, Dill, Jaden, Christian, and Cal. And I want to make a really big point, since I received so many messages from this man from last week and not being included in Tier 1. Look at that, Cal. You made it to Tier 1. You have ripped off 3 games over 100 points. Congratulations. Those seem to represent your 3 wins. But you've made it to Tier 1, and you are a 5 seed. And I'm sure I'll get a series of texts that'll say, well, why am I below Christian? Why am I below Jaden? I'm averaging more points than them. Well, you're not. I mean, you are averaging more points, but like, again, Jaden has played 2 top 5 teams, and he's won 1 and lost 1. And Christian's played 3 top 5 teams, and he's won 1 and lost 2. And you've played 1 top 5 team. You've basically feasted off of the mid-5 teams, which we just illustrated is a bit of a crapshoot in terms of what you're going to get from them. Again, you can get 120 points. You can get 54 points. So I don't know if that's necessarily a hat on a hat or a hat of accomplishment there. But, Cal, you made it. You are in Tier 1, averaging 109 points a game. So, obviously, spent enough time talking about you, Cal. You've made your addition to Tier 1 known. For Christian, he's also moved up into Tier 1. And like I've mentioned for, I feel like the last 2 weeks of, like, teams that I identified that could make the jump, Christian and Cal, but Christian specifically had been living in that, like, Tier 2 break for a while, and it was obvious that he could make the jump over Nick or Brandon or whoever else kind of fell out of that group. And Christian has made the jump. He got a big win. You know, he's got 2 back-to-back weeks of 115 plus essentially, which is good. I'm sure I'll hear on Wilson Time how he was disappointed in the fact that he scored only 115 points and that there was so much left on the table for him and his squad, and he probably won't admit that he was sweating any moment of the game on Monday of like how quickly Patrick Mahomes kind of got close, got within 8 points from what was about a 32-point deficit. So I'm hoping to hear something around those lines, but I'm not going to hold my breath. And then myself, Dill and Jaden, who have been in this for a bit of time, Dill and Jaden kind of have swapped spots now. Dylan is starting to really creep up a little higher and higher each week. He's averaging more and more points. He's got 4 weeks in a row, I believe, of over 100 points, which is pretty good. Getting some good variance there, 137, 105, 115. Touchdowns are still like one of the league leading highs. It is. He's the league leader in touchdowns right now with 33 touchdowns. So pretty significant amount of touchdowns happening there. So you can definitely see that's where that's coming. I think everyone is still, it's very much driven by Jonathan Taylor, who seems to either not get a touchdown because Daniel Jones poaches them, or he'll have a game in which he gets 3 touchdowns. And that seems to be the only variance that Jonathan Taylor lives in. So very helpful for Dill. And for myself, obviously wasn't a great week. Lost another running back to injury. This time, Marion Hampton going to IR. So that's unfortunate when that happens. I didn't even think that the injury after watching it was that bad. But clearly, I am not a doctor because it was that bad. So another running back down, which is, par for the course for this season, it seems. So I'm sure everyone will be rushing to get the Haskins or Vidal, pickup. And, it'll at least be something for 4 weeks at this point. But that offensive line for the Chargers is horrific. It is basically Marion Hampton was kind of performing, I think, only like the way like someone like him could perform against that offense with that offensive line. But now that offensive line is getting so bad, it's starting to affect even Herbert. I mean, the same Herbert that we saw for the first 3 weeks is not the same Herbert we're seeing right now. So we can't wait enough to get Joe Alt back on that line. But regardless, beyond this being a Chargers podcast moment right there, got over 100 points. So that's 5 games. Every game so far this season been over 100 points. The loss was eventually going to happen. There's no way it was going to be completely undefeated. But you started getting some visions of grandeur there. If I got that win and then I got to week 6, you start to think like, okay, I can maybe do this. But no, still a loss is a loss. And Christian put up a significant amount of points. I felt like I shit on Tony Pollard for just a second, and then I was like, well, Tony Pollard's dead because he fumbled and the Titans suck. And then the next thing you know, I don't check in on that score for a while, and the Cardinals are a bunch of idiots. Tier 2, we have Nick, Brandon, Alec, Jesse, and Peyton. So Nick and Brandon, who were in Tier 1, have fallen down into this Tier 2 space, which honestly feels a little bit more good because the ranges of the points per game from Tier 1 and Tier 2 is pretty significant. Everyone in Tier 1 is averaging over 100 points. In Tier 2, it's anywhere between 94 and 89 points, which feels like a proper tier here. So Nick and Brandon falling down. I feel like this is like the fucking... It feels like this. It's back-to-back weeks for Brandon on this like barely squeaking out a win sort of thing. But to not beat Diz with Brendan Strange basically going out in the first quarter after his like first and only catch, which honestly, iconic catch, because without that catch that Strange did do before getting eliminated, Brandon probably would have won off of it. So Strange is actually kind of a bit of a folk hero at this point for Tanner. But we all saw it, but still, you lose to a team that's completely winless, who loses his not very good tight end in like the first quarter after a catch, and you have Xavier Worthy playing with Patrick Mahomes, who's looking great, and you still can't get the W. That's a pretty tough look for Brandon there. So, that's a pretty low blow, especially as we get further and further separated into these, like as the season progresses, like losing to a team that's definitely in Tier 3, but definitely the worst team in the league right now. That's going to be a big torpedo to any hopes there. But nonetheless, Brandon sits there at 7. Didn't feel like I could move him really that much further down because all the teams behind him, Alec, Jesse, Peyton, and the team right next to him, Nick, all massively inconsistent. The Nick team that we got 3 wins out of and 3 games over 100, and he was right there with Jaden and I on those games. Well, that Nick seems to have disappeared with the Trey Benson injury. I think that Nick is probably taking on a little bit too many running back injuries there than his team can handle, because without James Cook teaching, the team kind of just peters out. 74 points last week, 72 points this week is not great. The touchdowns are starting to slow down as well. So Nick has got some red flags going up right now. And this is still a team that's like, I guess painfully missing Caleb Williams, which is a crazy sentence to say. Alec, Jesse, and Peyton, like I've already remarked, is kind of just a wide variance. Alec finally got over 100 points this week with 121, so that's a big surprise. Chuba Hubbard has a lot to do with that. So that's going to be an interesting, not Chuba Hubbard. Well, I mean, indirectly, Chuba Hubbard. Rico Dowdle has a lot to do with that, so I'm sure Alec will have a lot of a headache to decide between those two going forward. Jesse and Peyton. Jesse got a 100-point game. This is just kind of seems like the up and down season Jesse's going to have. He can go over 110, close to 110, then suddenly he can just have 76 points happen. The wide receiving core showed up. Jamar Chase showed up. So when that happens, it's going to be hard to beat Jesse if you don't even need to have all the other cylinders firing. Just as long as Jamar Chase does something, you're going to get somewhere. And then Peyton, the injuries stack up. Bill is sitting on the bench. It's just the whole class. It was just a classic week for Pate there. He had 3 weeks there, or even more, kind of looking a little bit more frisky, getting into the high hundreds. The first couple of weeks were just an anomaly, or the first week was just an anomaly, and then right back down to earth with a 54-point outing. Pretty bad there. And his opponent, which we're about to get to, only put up 80, which, again, is significantly not enough. Speaking of which, tier 3, we have Mike, Cody, Mitch, and Tanner. This is the only tier in which nothing has changed. Everyone is exactly how they left them last week. No one has moved a single inch. We have 2 and 3 teams, and 2 1 and 4 teams. Mitch's losing streak, which is only 2, but it really feels like 14 considering what happened last year, continues. The team, I think we can maybe say at this point, his ceiling is about 90 points, and his low is whatever the fuck you put up this week. Not great. Touchdowns are starting to really shrink up and shrivel up for this group. Cody and Tanner have yet to get over 20 touchdowns, which is not great, as you know. Just to put that in perspective, Brandon, his quarterback with Lamar and whatever replacement he has right now, has 15 touchdowns on the year. That is 3 shy of what Cody has in total for all of his positions. And again, this comes down to Cody just not having a great QB. Maybe Dak will fix that going forward. Yeah, and then we have Mitch and Tanner. I mean, the 2 teams that are just bad. But at least Tanner, like I said last week, has some underlying stats that are like, hey, this isn't too terrible. There is some hope here in some cases if you want to look at the categories. So he kind of squeaks out a win, an 86 to 84 point win, which in many cases really wouldn't get a win against a lot of other teams. But this was a week in which it could have gotten a win over, well, everyone he's adjacent to. He could have beaten Mitch with that score, could have beaten Cody with that score, and could have beaten Mike with that score. But going forward, that's not going to be necessarily enough. And the same goes for Mitch. 77 points is just, it's bad. But the only, I guess, silver lining for Mitch is that his schedule has been pretty insane so far. He's played 4 top 5 teams. No one else has played that many top 5 teams. So, and he's lost all of them, of course. But the one time he didn't play a top 5 team, he got the win. So there is a silver lining there that Mitch, your schedule will get a little bit lighter. Weekly points, down week in terms of scoring compared to the previous 3 weeks that have kind of maintained around 98 points, but 94 points on the week. League average is about 95. Everyone's got a win, everyone's got a loss, so you can start to look at those wins and losses averages. Sometimes as we get further along this river, we can start to look at those as like a little bit of a wacky anomaly. Sometimes they'll have teams that are like almost even with their wins and their losses. One of those being Dill. Again, he only has 1 loss, so it's, again, not fully there, but you see my point. He averages 111 in wins and 116 in losses. He's only lost once. but still kind of one of those wacky things there. Position leaders, some narrowing so far happening for some of these positions. Again, take a look after the exercise we did last week. I have hit a crazy trifecta, even though it was a down week. I am above the playoff line in all 6 categories. Yay! Crown me the statistical champion. But yeah, that's just to note, it can be done, and it is done, and it has been done, and it's done. So that is the nut report there. I mentioned this in GroupMe last night for the historical stats. We're at 192 games, and we just had Dill reach the 100-point mark, or 100-win mark. He's the 3rd team in DVFFL history to reach 100 wins, so congratulations, Dill. This is significant, of course, as he is also 8 games away from 100 losses, so he might be, and probably will be, our first team that has 100 wins and 100 losses, which will be really wacky to see. I think we've all kind of gotten pretty familiar with the double-digit numbers for, wins and losses, 20s and 80s and stuff like that. But to have a team that'll have triple digits both in wins and losses feels perfect for our 3-time champion like Dill. Other, significant milestones coming up shortly as Peyton is 2 losses away from joining the 100-loss club. He's also 6 wins away from joining the 100-wins club. So there are teams that are slowly starting to come into view around the 100-wins club. Peyton is basically the closest team we have to getting to the next 100-wins club. And he is also the closest team to the next, to the 100-losses club that we have, which is also just Cody and Brandon at this point. As for everything else, as you can imagine, it has all been updated across the board. Definitely take the time to go around all the historical stats and everything that's kind of updated as you go. Playoff chances start to become more and more of a thing, of course. So that's something you can always check in on, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get into the segment. Segment today is deadweight. It's spooky season. We've officially entered October. I know that Jaden was in the New York metro area. We weren't able to connect, and I think he mentioned that he was going to Sleepy Hollow, and I just so happened with my parents coming out to town, also went to Sleepy Hollow this past weekend. It was blazing hot, which was kind of funny. The only 2 times I've ever been to Sleepy Hollow, it's been hot as shit, and both times have been in October. But for anyone who hasn't been, it's a small town. A little, they go all out for Halloween, and they really put me in the mood for the spooky season as I was there. And so I feel like as we get into the scary season and the spooky season, but we're in spooky now, then it gets scary as the weeks progress. We know that this month is particularly the month for trades. We're getting closer and closer, about 4 to 5 weeks away from really the trade deadline. So before anyone gets any big ideas to make a big trade for a player like a Travis Hunter or something like that, let's take a moment to kind of identify some of the dead weight that exists on rosters out there that is probably going to be used for trade fodder or could be potentially a trade target for someone, some ill-informed, some fool that's looking to trade for one of these players. Now, the criteria here is that these are not going to be like suggestions of cheap handcuffs or waiver wire stars that don't really necessarily need to be on the team. I want to make sure that I'm making it a little bit more of a challenge of these are players that either got drafted or should be on a roster, but if they are on our roster, they do represent dead weight. So I want to make sure that these are rosterable. However, I will be making the case for all of these players that I mentioned that they necessarily shouldn't be on the team. I'm trying to make the case of maybe you do a little bit of a sabotage drop because this dead weight is just so bad. So though the criteria is they are rosterable by the hive mind of fantasy football, I believe that they should be dropped and or not on your team. If you can get rid of them, you should. But again, I'm about to spoil all the beans, as they never say. So I don't know how you're going to get rid of them. If everyone listens to this at least once, at least there's going to be a good point made. So I mentioned his star player to start. So let's start with Calvin. So Calvin's dead weight is Travis Hunter. Cal, I just want you to know I have 13 different owners, including myself, telling me not to talk about this player. But we're all openly pleased that you're the particular manager that's holding Travis Hunter. He's little D-Jax. He's a roster clogger. And the fact that he's been on your team and all of these injuries are happening around him on the team itself, the inefficiencies of Brian Thomas, the inefficiencies and the injuries that potentially happen around that offense, it seems like the funniest thing to me is that the first thing that happens is that we have the coach going to the media and making it abundantly clear to start that Travis Hunter's role will not expand with any injury to this, that, and the other. Like, Dyami Brown goes down, I want to make it clear, Travis Hunter is still working through his snap count. We have an idea for him, and it's like, we can't get a straight answer out of half of these coaching staffs, and suddenly we have the Jags going right to the media it feels like without even prompting it and saying, like, we just want to make this clear. I know you guys asked us, like, what day it is, but I just want to make it known that Travis Hunter's role is not expanding in any way. They don't know if he can even play offense or if he should play defense. They don't really know what to do with him, and it's so funny. They just traded 2 first-round picks for it, and you can just get the sense that the Jags are just like, fuck. Like, this isn't what we wanted. So the fact that he's being passed in the target pecking order so quickly by Parker Washington in a passing offense that can't even support Brian Thomas is hilarious. So whatever you do, Cal, just keep doing what you're doing. But for the rest of us, he's dead weight, and we're so happy you have him. And I know we don't usually talk about other leagues, but as someone who actually did draft him in 2 other leagues that are a 10-man and a 12-man league. Again, no one really gives a shit. I get it. I had high hopes for Travis Hunter just because of the dual position and everything like that. But after like 2 weeks, and I mean it, after 2 weeks, I dropped him in both of those leagues, in a 10-man and a 12-man leagues, both of which are half and full PPR. That's for Christian. And just so it's known, no one has picked up Travis Hunter in either of those leagues. And those are, less and smaller than ours. Next on the list, we have Tanner. His dead weight is Ridley, Flowers, Smith, Tucker, and Dobbs. Having 2 of these types of receivers is enough to make any sane manager send one away, but Diz has effectively traded and acquired more of these guys as the season progresses. Tell me this, on any of the names, Ridley, Flowers, Devonta Smith, Trey Tucker, and Dobbs, you're down 8. It's Monday Night Football. Can you trust any one of these names to get you confidently 8 points? Like, confidently. You could say, well, at this stage, go get them, and then you throw out that name. Zay Flowers? No. Devonta Smith? No. Trey Tucker? Good Lord, no. Dobbs? Maybe? But no. And then Ridley? Absolutely not. This entire core, this wide receiving core, is built completely off of hope. Any one of these guys could be dropped, and rightfully so, should be dropped. And if they did, this is the perfect sabotage drop. They would, if you drop, let's say, I feel like no one gives a shit about Trey Tucker at this point, but Dobbs, no. But I feel like the other 3, Devonta Smith. Let's say you just dropped Devonta Smith. Someone is going to drop 50 fab on this guy. And they're going to think, wow, Tanner, what an idiot. I got this guy. And I bet 3 weeks later, he will be dropped again. And then someone else will drop like another 20 plus fab on him with the hope of like, I'll hold him longer. I will believe in him. And then he will get dropped again later in the season. And then by season's end, he may not even be on a team, or he would be kind of like floating on someone's roster because they picked him up for free a couple of times. And I mean this, like, this is no slight to the player, nor is it slight to to what they have accomplished in the past. In the current reality that we live in, none of these players are reliable. If you look at Ridley, Titans can't figure out how to get the ball from the QB's hand to his hands, which is a fundamental problem for a wide receiver and a QB connection. For Flowers, Lamar is gone, and that offense is on par with the Titans right now. And when Lamar was there, we got one great game, and then we got the classic Zay Flowers dud. And then you're like, wow, shit, I saw the hope, now I got to hold on to this guy. Devonta Smith, the Eagles' play calling has pissed off their 2 highest paid wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, while still, in the last game, giving Barkley only 6 carries. How the fuck does that team do what it is doing right now with all the weapons that it's doing it with? Like, it's like Dallas Goedert is it, and they're like everything else, who gives a shit? Trey Tucker, see also Ridley. The QB can't figure out how to get the ball from his hands to his actual own player's hands. Oftentimes, Geno Smith is just throwing, to the opposite team. And I feel like the official language of the Raiders right now is into knees. And then we have Dobbs, the guy that Tanner probably has no feels about, but probably is better than everyone else here and is also the most likely person to get dropped first. Alec, dead weight. Mark Andrews. This is someone who loves to play Russian roulette. Mark Andrews is essentially a higher build name, but he is Kyle Pitts. Like, that's where we are at right now. You cannot trust him, and that's the whole point. If you're going to have a position of suck, and it usually is fine to have it be a tight end, and obviously you're just playing the roulette of, like, if he gets a touchdown, like, then my week is made. But, like, this is an offense that's even, like, a lower passing floor than, like, the Eagles at this point. Like, there's just nothing positive happening right now in Baltimore. And I just don't know what to expect if out of Snoop Huntley or Cooper Rush, and then the Bine, and then Lamar, who's going to be leading a team that's probably 5 games under 500. Mark Andrews showed signs of this version of himself last year, disappeared, came back as a new Mark Andrews. Now we're back to this again, where he's inconsistent, but he'll blow up on your bench. And that's the thing, is like, you just can't trust this guy. So I think it's best to just let him go, see where he falls in the waiver wire, bye-week fill-in. I can guarantee that he'd be on multiple teams by season's end if he was off of your team, Alec. Dill. The meme of the Dales is a known legend for Dill's team. The Rondales and the Wandales. And he's been the butt end of my jokes for trade bait and stuff like that. But I just want to bury the sword one last time. Wan'Dale Robinson is not good. He sucks. And he's dead weight on Dill's team. Anyone who trades for him is an absolute fool, and I will let it be known if you do that move that you are an absolute fool. And let Dill be the fool that holds on to him all year round. He is a small slot guy that occasionally wanders off and plays on the outside and does something. And in 2 games without Malik Neighbors, which is obviously the big selling point now for the Wan'Dale believers, which truly could just be one person I'm talking to, the man who owns him. Wan'Dale was essentially the number 2 all year, and we would assume with the production that we saw against the Cowboys, which again, the Cowboys, that he was doing so well, that he would kind of take on that number 1 role. He had shown the most signs of life. Darius Slayton is not really going to get. Jalen Hyatt sucks. Theo Johnson is whatever. So you would assume that Wan'Dale would kind of step into that role. So in those 2 games with Neighbors out, we have gotten 1.4 points and 3.2 points. Now, would you believe that he's played 95% of the snaps in these games, and he has 13 targets over those 2 games, and he has done 1.4 points and 3.2 points in the opportunity of a lifetime with no other target hog, with a man in Neighbors who was literally telling his team, please pass to someone else, not me. Like, you don't have to pass it to me all the time. They're trying that, and it sucks. So Wan'Dale Robinson sucks. Cody, the most commendable portion of this season for Cody has been trading for and promptly benching DJ Moore after 1 week of starter play. DJ Moore has been has been bad, and he's just bad. As soon as Caleb Williams showed up, the DJ Moore that we are all theoretically chasing from 2023 with Justin Fields has completely disappeared. The guy himself, like the player himself, feels very miscast as a wide receiver. He could be good in the slot, but they like Zacchaeus and they like Luther Burden, and it's just a different role that they want to play with him in the slot. So they don't really want to put him in the slot. And he's just a little too small to be on the outside, and they have, Odunze on the outside, so he just kind of exists in the offense. And in doing this existence, DJ Moore usually averages around 3 to 5 points a game. You can put him out there, and you can pray that, in spite of everything, Caleb Williams accidentally throws him a touchdown, which is the only positive game that he had this year. He had 8 points, but it was 8 points. Everything else has been in the 3 to 5 point range. And this is all, again, a final message to us all. We're all chasing the DJ Moore from 2023. That was with Justin Fields. Again, a guy that we don't really think of as a prolific target tree passer. And yet, we cannot fall for this once again with DJ Moore. If he comes up in the bait, and Cody already fell for this bait once, but I'm saying don't fall for it twice. There is nothing to be gained from this DJ Moore experience right now in the Bears. There is no hope of the revival of 2023. That was a microcosm. Name another wide receiver on that team other than DJ Moore in that year. If you're saying Mooney, I don't think so. So just think about that. Pause yourself. Let dead weight sit on Cody's team. Mitch, straightforward. Ollie Gordon. He only has 12 points on the year, which means that he hasn't even outscored his draft price of $18. You would hope that you would get the return of $1, of the amount of points that you drafted him, and Ollie Gordon hasn't done that. And oftentimes I wouldn't really assume that Ollie Gordon would be worthy of a conversation piece like this, but because Mitch dropped a cool $18 on him, which is about too shy of a lot of other really great players, and obviously we've even had better players that were cheaper. It's worth mentioning, and he started him this week, and I think he averaged negative points for Mitch this week. Jesse. Jesse knows intimately by now what this name is going to be. Kyler Murray is the Trevor Lawrence with Wilson time PR. If anything, let's credit Wilson time for hyping in the conversation around a player that is so extremely mid in reality that we all kind of get blinded by it. Like, this is like DJ Moore, where we are chasing the past, but the past was over 5 years ago in which Kyler Murray was like actually a suitable elite quarterback. And I get it. You're in the draft. You're looking around, even when you're looking for a trade for a QB, because you may not love your QB. And you can say to yourself, well, shit, I don't love what I've got. But Kyler Murray is like that next tier down. He could be cheap to get. He runs. That's always a good sign. And then you get him, and then it sucks. Everything about it is just not good. Every potential thought you could have about, like, this is going to work out ends up not working out. So there is no savior that's going to come. Like, Kyler's not going to be the savior for anybody. Even last year when he was QB 10, did anyone other than Dill believe he was good? Like, I think if I told you that he was QB 10, I feel like you almost wouldn't believe me, but it was true. He was QB 10. It just didn't feel like it. Since 2022, he's passed for over 20 touchdowns once. And it was like 24 touchdowns. It's not like, oh, he got 40 and then he lost it. So the pocket passer that we thought he was, well, he's not that anymore. He's also thought of as a rushing QB. And since his 11 touchdown outing, which again was in 2020, he's only rushed for 5 touchdowns twice since then. Which, again, so he's not a rushing QB and he's not a passing QB. So what does he do? Well, this is what he does. He has 52 fucking fumbles since he entered the league. And that was about 7 years ago. 52 fumbles. Dude, like, if you look at his like fumble chart on the desktop, he like at 1 year had like 13 fumbles. Now, this isn't meaning that they're all lost, but 52 fumbles on top of the potential of interceptions, on top of the fact that he doesn't pass for a lot of touchdowns, on top of the fact he doesn't really pass for a lot of yards, on top of the fact that he doesn't really rush for touchdowns that often. Just a dead weight QB. Next, we have Peyton. Do you know, and I'll let you take a moment to think about this. Do you know who the most targeted wide receiver is in the NFL? Is it Ja'Marr Chase? I mean, it's a good guess, but no, it's not that. It's not Ja'Marr Chase. It's not Jackson Smith-Njigba either. Nor is it Puka Nacua, which is pretty crazy, or Devontae Adams, or really anyone on the Rams. No, the answer to that is Chris Olave. 54 targets after 5 games. He's essentially getting 10 targets a game, which is fucking crazy. And I know what you're thinking. Whoa, you know what? I haven't really watched the Saints that much. I mean, I guess, yeah, Chris Olave can kind of get that. They've been in kind of some blowouty sort of shitty games. I guess like Chris Olave is like must be teaching. I would just, one of those players on one of those teams I just don't pay attention to. Wrong. He doesn't teach. The most points he has this season is 6. Just 6. Literally flat 6. And his low for the season is 5.4. So, silver lining, that is some consistency. But usually after 5 weeks, we'd want to see some like hope of a ceiling game, considering, again, he leads the NFL in targets. You'd want to see one of those like, oh, we got a 20-point game, and the rest are like 5s and 6s. I can kind of like, if I hang on, maybe I'll see it. Nope, the hope there is 6. So he's got all these targets. He's running a bunch of routes. He's out there most of the time in game scripts that totally support him and an offense that throws the ball a lot. And all he can do is 6. So don't trade for Chris Olave, especially you, Tanner. This guy fits your wide receiving core of pain that you've got there. Next, we have Mike. Your dead weight is literally every wide receiver on your bench right now. Shepard, Kirk, Austin, Turpin. All of these are number 3s operating as number 2s and doing so poorly. So your solutions here, Mike, is be like Cal and sell similar players like Thornton and offer them up for, do you want to buy Thornton for $3 draft dollars? And then get told firmly no by everyone in the league and settle on 5 to 10 fab. That seems to be the path if you wanted to move these guys in a trade. But after a little segment like this, I don't think it's even worth it. It just seems like it's one of those things where you got a whole bench core of dead weight. And not to say that there isn't really much out there on the waiver wire, but don't be like Tanner and have a bunch of these guys that you have to rely on. These guys, these 4, you got 3 other wide receivers that are workable. These 4 are best left for someone to try to find hope in places that hope doesn't exist. And speaking of which, we have Brandon Ayuk. I think a couple of theories I have for me on this one. First of all, his name is Brandon, and Brandon has Brandon, so that makes some sense to me. But Brandon Ayuk is nowhere close to returning this season. And every player we've seen with a knee injury like this kind of really fucked up mid-season big knee injury, sans the super freak of Adrian Peterson, has come back worse the season in which they first come back. Whether that means they come back mid-season, they're bad. TJ Hawkinson came back from a nasty knee injury last year. TJ Hawkinson isn't good now, really wasn't great last year either. Javonte Williams came back from a knee injury that was really bad, similar to Brandon Ayuk's. And, he was really bad until this year, which was almost 2 years removed from that knee injury. Brandon Ayuk is not going to be good this year at all. And plus, I don't know what the best case scenario is here for Brandon with Brandon Ayuk, considering he has George Kittle. Is he hoping to start Ayuk and Kittle at the same time? I don't get that either. And holding him all year just to keep him for $8 next year, oh, fuck. That's the plan. Brandon is keeping this man on his roster so that he can keep a wide receiver 1, and I'm doing air quotes around that, for $8 next year. Jesus, Brandon. I'm surprised if he even plays this year. And so what you're basically doing, and maybe it's because you spend so much time with Cal during the draft, but you're holding dead weight on your bench like Deshaun Watson has done, all in the name of a keeper. And not only that, you don't even have him in your IR. You have George Kittle in your IR. I can tell you could save yourself the sleeper headache of just moving and flipping the 2 in. There's a higher chance that George Kittle is coming back this couple weeks than Brandon Ayuk, who may not be coming this couple months. Next, we have Juwan Johnson. We've talked a lot about, my God, how many targets. And Juwan Johnson's one of the most targeted tight ends in the NFL. But this time he's actually done some stuff. The problem is he's done some stuff without it being on Jaden's team. Jaden has just made a trade for Juwan Johnson 2 weeks ago. We spent $2 in draft and some fab to get him. And I think it's now time, in due part, to say it's time to let Juwan Johnson go. He's going back to his original role, which is dead weight on that team. Reason being, Taysom Hill is back and Moreau is back. So the tight ends that were kind of taking away those opportunities from Juwan Johnson have returned. And in that return for all 3 of them, we saw that Juwan Johnson basically put up like 1.2 points or whatever. And hilarious enough, Jaden picked up Taysom Hill anyway, so he already knows distinctly what that's going to look like. So now he's got 3 tight ends on the team. I think Darren Waller is safe to say to be one of the ones that you should just roll with at this point, Jaden. But the other 2, let them go. I know you spent some money. I know it's like that, but just cut bait, let it go. Otherwise, you're going to be holding Juwan Johnson on the hope of what he did 3 weeks to start the season. And that same scenario, unless Hill and Moreau get hurt again, is not going to really be the case. Next, we have Nick Jerry Jeudy. Nick, you don't get the benefit of really understanding what Jerry Jeudy has been to this league for a long time. Obviously, you can probably make a good guess onto where the league falls with Jerry Jeudy, but last year in particular, because you didn't see all that, Jerry Jeudy, of course, was being Jerry Jeudy, as he usually does. Hope and then total failure. And as an anecdote, for your education, Nick. I was a very big Jerry Jeudy fan coming out of college. I was such a fan. I held him for all those days in the Broncos, and he ended up being absolutely nothing. And then, of course, last year, we have Jerry Jeudy come to life with the circumstance being that the Browns suck and Jameis Winston is on the team. And when those two things happened at the same time, Jerry Jeudy became functional, which, again, everyone knows this. But what it has done is it didn't do anything to repair the image of Jerry Jeudy. Even by end of season, Christian, who had enjoyed, and I say that not fully with the capital E enjoy, had enjoyed Jerry Jeudy sitting on his bench for most of that good run, and he was eventually dropped before the end of the season. Jerry Jeudy is just what he always is, and this year we're seeing the return of that Jerry Jeudy. Whatever number one that we saw for those 7 weeks with Jameis Winston has more to do with Jameis Winston than it has to do with him. And because of all this, just as like a nice reminder, similar to the Cal situation, all 13 of us are pleased that you're holding him on your roster, but for the rest of us, not worth it. Like, dead weight. Well, there's so many people who have been burned by this man. You can drop him, and I bet he sits there. You can get him for free. I'm sure someone will try to make it happen. No Cedric Tillman, and Jerry Jeudy still does bad. Like, this is not happening this year for him. So thank you, Nick, for holding him and taking him away from us. And speaking of Christian, we have Christian. Tracy. No one wants him, not even you. Like, that's it. Tracy is just, it's a mistake. You're holding a mistake. Now you're in that keeper conundrum of we've only seen people drop keepers where they were just bad or they were injured. You know, that's why they were bad. They were injured. And now you're in a space where he is injured. He, I guess, could come back soon, but to what? I know that you're waiting now on the Cam Scatabo to basically end his season early, and then what? Put Tracy back in for the same inefficiencies that we saw at the start of the season? I don't think so. So, Christian, Tracy is absolute dead weight. You could drop him, and he would obviously get picked up, but I don't know what people are seeing in him at that point. And then lastly, myself, I think the dead weight that I have is Jalen Coker. Maybe it's just the name. Maybe it's just the memes. But, Jalen Coker has been reserving an IR slot as my team starts to acquire more IR slots. And, whatever hope I have for that Panthers passing offense, I believe is going to come out of Jalen Coker in the slot, which the team was super excited about. But as the season has progressed, I don't know if that hope still exists. Like, that Panthers offense isn't exactly one where I'm, like, thrilled to be in. And then you see how good the running backs were, at least with Rico Dowdle. Maybe that changes the tune, get the ball out of Bryce Young's hands and not have him pass so much. Who knows? But Jalen Coker, for all the hope that he sits in my IR slot, is my dead weight. At this point, I feel like I could drop him. Someone will probably pick him up for that 1 week reveal, and then suddenly like, oh, okay, he's a Panther. And then they'll drop him again. So anyway, that is all of the teams. That's all the dead weight. As a reminder, I'll go through them all at the very top again. We have Cal, Travis Hunter, dead weight. Tanner, it's Ridley, Flowers, Smith, Tucker, and Dobbs, dead weight. Alec, Mark Andrews, dead weight. Dylan, Wandale, dead weight Robinson. Cody, DJ Moore, Mitch, Ollie Gordon, Jesse, Kyler Murray, Peyton, Chris Olave, Mike, every wide receiver on your bench, which includes Shepard, Kirk, Austin, and Turpin. Brandon, Ayuk, Jaden, Juwan Johnson, Nick, Jerry Jeudy, Christian, Tyrone Tracy, and myself, Jalen Coker. That is everybody. That is all the dead weight as we go into the spookiest and tradiest of seasons. I also want to give one last shout out. Dill, my God, I hope you talk about this on your Wilson Time trade sections. You usually do. Sometimes you don't if it's involving you. But cannot believe that you have been just Mr. Pure of Heart, Mr. I trade player for player only. That's all I do, baby. That's all I'm looking to do. And then literally the next day that you post that episode, you do 2 trades that have nothing to do with player for player at all. Incredible hypocrisy. And I just want to say, for all the musings of the Wilson Time PR team, to say that I'm Darth Nuttiest and controlling the narrative, and I say one thing but I do another. Quite literally, look into the mirror of the people who are doing this when they're the ones who can't even do the thing that they're outright trying to do themselves. Like, Dill can't make a player-for-player trade without it being an absolute fleecing, and the only one he can reference is one in which he fleeced. So let that be known that Dill failed the mission. Meanwhile, I succeeded in the mission of doing a player-for-player trade with doing the Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta deal that Mike and I did. And not once, for the absolute transparency of the league, not once did Mike and I discuss money. Not once was it walked back. Not once was it any of that stuff. It was always player-for-player from the very beginning. And that was a kind of a refreshing moment, I think, for both of us. I think, if anything, not to speak on Mike's behalf, but I felt like I was feeling like, all right, well, the money's gonna have to get brought up at some point, and it never did, and I'm so thankful for that. But just don't let the hypocrites get away with this, and that's Wilson time about player for player trades and whatnot. Like anything Dill says that he wants to do, he's gonna probably do the opposite, and let that be known, because I have been the one who's been skewered as he says one thing, but he's gonna do another thing. I've been pure of heart this year. I have been absolutely pure of heart. So let that be the soundbite that you guys clamor on to. We got all sorts of shady tactics going on. We got Cal trying to sell off Tyreek Thornton for $3 draft dollars and then eventually settling for 10 fucking fab. When Cal texted me that if I wanted Tyreek Thornton, or like absolutely not, and I told him you can drop him. Cal said absolutely will not, and then he sells them for 10 fucking draft dollars. Absolutely insane. All the tactics that I get accused of like selling. Cal needed to make room for something, and that's what he does. So everyone who's doing those kind of those little moves that I've been accused of doing, of you're about to drop someone, do you want this guy? Look at the fucking league that's doing it right now. So you all have learned from the very best in that technique. But don't be skewering this podcast for that kind of thing, because, again, like I said, we've been righteous. We've been a good Darth Lord this year, and we're going to keep it that way. That's it. That's my rant. Goodbye.